No, you just you look at me. So look forwards. Trying to find some bones here, so and apologies again. That's you, look. Just a little move around and that's you. With the arm, copy me, thank you. Just hold it really super steady for me. Great. So just wave your hand at the big screen. Fantastic. Well done. You did good. You did good. I mean, all you have to do is hit me 5 balls. So where they go, who cares? I mean, it doesn't matter. As long as they hit the net, you're good. So I'm not sure the Hilton would appreciate the wall being hit, but just hold the club for me. But if you hit, as long as you hit the net, you've passed. You can go to college a happy lady. I hope you have a great time there. It's a cool experience. And you get to play in some good events and get to go to some good clubs. And just take your hand off for me. Just pop your hand on the club. Good. Last one. And then we're all good to go. So I get your coach to kind of give most of the feedback, and he can share all the kind of observations, so you can just relax knowing you won't be asked to do a great deal. Is that okay? Yeah. Good. Okay, hit a couple for me. Just get used to the bits. Okay. That's better. Okay, if you can hit me 2 more, then we have enough then. All the hard stuff is done. You can relax. Good. That's fine. Yeah, I'll move that in a second. Doesn't matter now. Okay. You can relax for 2 minutes and just thank you. What's this young lady's background and observations and what have you? It's a good, very good. Yeah. So some of the kind of pelvis stuff we discussed earlier around that kind of. I mean, it's Can I ask what age are you now? 19. I mean, it's not unusual. Like you kind of mentioned, kind of just after lunch, we went to the segment-based stuff, that it can be fairly kind of revealing the pelvis as far as how someone attempts to produce speed. So we're actually going to go into clubhead speed a lot tomorrow and look at kind of how people produce speed and what really connects back to, say, improving clubhead speed and what have you. But certainly I think with, again, those wonderfully developing players in kind of humans that we have, certainly before kind of 2021 when all those growth plates fuse and they get that wonderfully kind of controlled frame, It's not unusual to get really dominance with that kind of big movement system that we have, the big superficial muscles, the ones you can see really, because the ones that give us that wonderfully controlled posture again, and just a little bit, just because of life and what have you. So it's very typical in younger players, regardless of gender, that they have that really kind of elevated right side of that pelvis. And much of it connects back to what they don't enjoy doing through here. They then simply get very dominant up through here. So I completely reinforce that. Okay, happy if we just discuss some bits, and you're comfortable we just go through with the guys, and cool. I think again, how I would approach this more for coaching play in particular in this case. I mean, it's great that we have, I'm not aware of these two players, by the way. This has actually just worked out very well today. And I think what we have is clearly, I think, with Marcus just at a different stage in life. His priorities are clearly very different, perhaps, to you in this case. That Marcus is very, very much, he just lives in that position through body, personality, habit, life, that kind of stuff. I think more in your case, I think it's possibly more just the awareness, more the concepts, the perception of perhaps how we could move through backswing. So although I think it just displays in a very different way, it's a kind of a similar kind of thread in some ways that connects back to why most likely she kind of moves in that way. Even going back to setup's great, by the way. I think she stands very well at her dress. Just be aware of kind of how she sits kind of through both feet. So I think it was you that asked the question around foot position. We kind of said it almost that playful way. So in a playful way, just kind of face me, kind of hold on to the club, just jump nice and high for me and then land. Just jump as high as you can and drop down. Good. Just kind of look like that. Oh, she adjusted it. But you kind of saw, you land and went like that immediately. How they land, very good, by the way. You'll find that how they intuitively land typically is their kind of, thank you, boys and ladies, is that kind of intuitive foot position they like. So just, who cares what happens? Jump as high as you can and land for me. And just leave the feet there for me. As best you can, come and take your start. And she just adjusted the foot again. Don't worry. No, you're fine. But hopefully in some ways it's kind of revealing the story. I think it's just so much that way at a dress. So it kind of goes back to that good question you so rightly asked earlier on. And the way that it's that wonderful discussion you have within anatomy. And it very much depends on who you ask and the player you're working with. Is it the foot and ankle that controls the hip? Or the hip that controls the foot and ankle? Well, it's a bit of both, and it depends on what those imbalances may well be. I suspect, perhaps in this young lady's case, that the way she sits through that foot makes it quite challenging then for that pelvis to move in and around that hip joint, as you so rightly say, amongst some other areas as well. So I think what you do very well, again, GPS, how do I get there from here? Or that kind of works. So little references we can play with. That's a playful one, and it's a nice live example. There you go. Don't worry. Allow me just to get a club 1 second. I've never seen that done before. That was neat, that. She's clever. Lucky Oklahoma. Another way of doing this. So an alignment stick's better just because it's thinner, but you kind of use what you have, I guess. Just placing a club inside. So very much going back to the first response we gave. About a ball's width between inside the big toe and in the shaft. So good. On both sides for me. So without moving the feet now, just come and take your start position for me. Different? In what way? Rather than? Yeah. Yeah. Good. So, I mean, even come and take your start position on the mat once again. So, as if you're going to hit balls into the net. Just the only one now. There is no that is the choice. They'll learn very quickly. So just reposition those feet like we just discussed. So point, good. Just playfully make a backswing from that position for me. Very good. Come back again. Just pop your feet back in that position for me now. Just make a backswing from there. I mean, going back to that kind of the Retief Goosen, thank you, buddy, you can relax there, but how those feet get really twisted and quite active and quite torsion, really gets poured into that position, which then goes up to the knee and into the pelvis and into the spine and what have you. I mean, Mate kind of made a good point before. It's one of those questions, again, that when working with players, you kind of start from the neck downwards or feet upwards. I think certainly more in the developing players, you normally go bottom up. They're much more adaptable through lower limb at this age. I think more so as, say, boys my age, normally up top is typically kind of where you start with players. So a lot of it depends on sometimes just the age they're at. So for the younger players, kind of foot up through hip and into neck. I think more the older boys that come in perhaps more kind of neck downwards. Okay, so back into that nice foot position once again. And just show as best you can a backswing. Good. And just kind of reference whatever that is. Come back for me again. Now put the foot back into that really kind of pointy position forwards. Make a backswing. Different? Can you explain in what way? Good. So back into that one for me again. Again, different. I mean, it doesn't have to be, it can be whatever it needs to be. You might go, okay, that's just a bit different. Or we had with the guy before, really quite evident how different it felt. But I think a lot of it just goes back to, in this lady's case, that just, again, that foot position and that ankle position really makes it so challenging to move into that hip. Going back to, we mentioned earlier, the later they adapt, often more down below the imbalance sits. And I'll actually show you it through the 3D data, actually, how you kind of make these calls. So looking at the data now, let's do it this way. Try and do it properly. Again, it just kind of helps you kind of, whoops. Sorry, I'm being very silly today. Apologies. Let's do it this way. Look with we kind of made that call earlier, that the later they adapt in the swing, normally further down below the imbalances typically sit. So with Marcus before, pretty much immediately in backswing, he kind of went that way. So most likely it's kind of how he moves around the neck. So I mean, it's just the way it's worked. So I don't know who chose these two samples, but thank you so much, because you really did choose two of the best examples, because they are so different in a great way. And it really kind of connects back to kind of much of what I hope we discussed this morning. Certainly with this young lady, using that green plot as a reference for you now. So it's about this point in time where that green plot starts to go upwards. So the green plot is the forward thrust in the pelvis, the extension, as some often refer to it as, how late that thrust happens. So how late she starts to lose control in that pelvis is pretty much when the club is exactly at that point in time. So when you really start to kind of move in to that kind of lower limb, hip, knee, ankle, when that foot's held in that very kind of constrained position, that kind of figures. So again, almost going back to the very first discussion this morning, that when the system can't rotate, we're simply moving one or two directions, either laterally or in this young lady's case, forwards and backwards. David. Precisely. Yeah, even more. Yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely right. Because it goes back to, again, the minute you really put your foot in and transition, it pulls us into that dominant posture. So again, is there such a thing as early extension? That's not. Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, UC sent me some really nice feedback this morning. He goes, based on the sessions he did, I think back in August. Anyway, the recent sessions UC gave the guys recently, he goes, there's lots of this kind of thrust in motion. So again, it's more, okay, there's a thread developing now. You know, you're a good player, you know, clearly very, very good at what you do. They just find ways of moving around problems. It's not unusual to go either this way or this way because it doesn't like moving that way. So you'll typically see one or two things, that lateral movement or the forwards and backwards movement. Yeah. Well, I've known Tyrrell 15 years, and you know, he doesn't really move that way. But I know he's just more this, and I've been lucky to know him a long time. Yeah, and I mean, the great thing is you always get. There's always an acceptance. That's what makes golf such fun. When we come on to tomorrow, massively yes, yeah, and it's possibly still the biggest connection back to wrist and neck pain. So I'm going to share an example of one of your countrymen tomorrow, who I spent a lot of time with last year, who missed 6 months of the season through wrist pain, but it connected back to the pelvis thrust again. So when we resolved the pelvis thrust, the wrist pain. So there's always that kind of trade you have, you know, there's always that trade, performance, pain, distance. Essentially, you really can't disconnect, they're all inherently connected. You really can't perform if you're in pain, but if you're in pain, you then can't perform. So massively, yes. But it's a very intuitive way of gaining distance for young kids because that then goes back to long, heavy clubs that just haven't matured yet anatomically. They find it harder going this way because of what we discussed this morning, just where they're at in life. So you're right. There are a few people. It's just unusual, David, to find someone. It's for us. But I would really go back to let's. I want to play with a few drills. If you're happy doing some drills today with this particular lady, and just really giving some awareness for just controlling that pelvis through back swing. But much of it for me really just goes back to that foot position, and then just an add-on for that. I just want to show you one thing over here. So to go back to a lot of what we discussed earlier on. You're doing great, by the way. So you're doing good. So let's look at it this way. Let's look at it this way. Oh, come on, Mark. So the red line is the path the hands go back on. And the yellow line is the path the hands come down on. Again, it's just different, but it's very typical in, again, younger players. It's just different to see. And this is not the club path, this is the hand path. For the hand path in downswing, unless there's a real whatever going back, to be beneath the path it goes back on. To get rotation from there, when the hand path is under or beneath the path it goes back on, good luck, because of all those external forces that are exposed, which will come on a bit more tomorrow. So a lot of them, why you start to see that pelvis elevate, is just in response to when the hand path goes so far behind us, we adapt through here. The GPS again is a way of moving around this. So almost that reference we had of the right arm, we look at it this way now. That really how much behind the elbow, shoulder, the elbow then gets halfway down. But I would say a lot of it is just, again, young player, just where she's at through maturation. I think as she gets a little bit more mature through maybe some of the training-based stuff she may do, just being aware of two things, which is if you're happy playing with some bits now, that right foot is really a big priority for me. Avoiding that hip moving forwards in backswing. I think she used that as a way of moving around this. And I'd be curious then once we get the elbow moving better, how it then connects back to your feedback as a player and your observations as a coach as far as really avoiding that hand pass moving that way. So let's have a play with you. So you're happy doing a few little drills and comfortable? Good. Let's get you disconnected and let's this is good. We'll spend a lot tomorrow around kind of hand and club path, around how influential, how the hands move in transition can often then control how we move. So we'll do a lot of that tomorrow. Thank you for that, by the way. It's great. Yeah, I can sit in it, yeah. Okay, I'll give an example here. I want you to do this one. I think it'd be better for than other ones. So anyway, left foot on the chair in this case. And then really sit into the hip. So very much the kind of pressure goes into the right ankle. As you rotate back, just keep the knee facing forwards. Hold it for 2 or 3 seconds. Come back. And then just reproduce that for a good handful. 6, 7, 8, 9 times perhaps. So rotate back, hold for 2 or 3 seconds. Just until you start to go, okay, that's a bit kind of, that's fatiguing. And then with no delay, with that foot in that nice position, make a few rotations and then share the feedback you have with the group. Let's see if this works. Yeah, I'll sit on it. There you go. I can sit down today. Okay, you're good, I promise you, all fine. So left foot on the chair. Good. So then really sit into that kind of right hip, so all the pressure goes into the ankle. So the reason why I want you to do this one, with that left foot, really kind of try and push the chair backwards. That's good. So as you rotate back, doesn't need to be, again, it's like a pitch shot swing. Control the foot, control the knee. Keeping that left heel pushing into the chair for me. That's better, very good. Again, it can only be a pitch length. Rotation doesn't need to be. Most guys do things way too fast anyway, so a little kind of 50-yard pitch. Very good, by the way. And you may just start to get some awareness around that right side of your pelvis, into that right hip, into the back of the, into those kind of glutes on that right side. Okay, to it. So keep that left foot, try and push the chair away from you. That's better, very good. Push the chair away, so keep pushing that left foot back. On these next two, just hold the rotation for 5 seconds each. So push back with the left foot, push, 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 push. That's better, so try and push me away, good. And one more. Oh, good, so take the foot off the chair for me. So with no delay, just into your start position, just position into your setup. Just be aware of that right foot, hands and arms across rib cage, so foot out more. Point the toe over there. Good. Make some rotations back. And once again. Different. So it kind of goes back to those connection points we discussed. You've really got 3 main ones through backs, and that kind of right shoulder, right scapula, that right hip, and that right ankle. So kind of more awareness around that right hip. Different through the ankle. Just go back into that position for me. That kind of move as you were. So do it as you were previously. Let the left hip really come forward. So as you rotate, kind of let your left hip come forwards. Good. That's how you fare we're moving. Just going to reference what that means to you. Now, place the foot back in a nice position again. Good. So it kind of goes back to the idea rotations of value really above the diaphragm. What happens in the upper rib cage is the real important part of rotation. How much we can move through here rather than the idea of separating pelvis and rib cage. Very good. No, good question. I mean, this is a bit generic, this. So you might get someone comes in with a certain foot condition or a certain foot shape, for example. So if you've got flat feet, so there's a reduced ability to maybe pronate and supinate the foot, perhaps. Then you'd adjust the foot position. Actually had someone recently with probably the highest amounts of internal medial rotation I've seen in those hips. They actually need to stand a bit more that way just to help reduce that rotation. I've only ever seen one in 20-something years doing this. Yeah, one player. Yeah, yeah. I mean, just so much rotate. But then they have a certain pelvis shape. They have what you call a retroverted pelvis. They live like this anyway through life, so it's a bit more of a complex question. But it's like saying all eat broccoli. Why? Because broccoli is good for us. But to really get some of his nutritional demands, you need to look at their biochemistry and that kind of stuff. But that's just good for most people. But you'll get some people that just need a little bit more, a little bit less. But I've only seen one in 20 years that ever needed to stand that way, because it really is very unusual. I think coaches have done that historically to control this, but then I think they probably missed the reason why the pelvis was doing that, perhaps. Okay, let's, do you want a fun one to do? Do you want to be really good at this? How good do you want to be? Go on then. Another way of doing this. This is way too stiff and way too tense for you, so apologies, it needs to be much lighter. So for you, put it above both knees. And can I then probably get you to come in the middle again? So the idea of these big, thick tubing is just simply not good. Absolutely right. We'll do that bit next, yeah. That, like a lot of, when they've lost that connection to that right shoulder and had the pelvis moves in backswing. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. Can I just have you stand again, just about here to face that direction? So, hands and arms across rib cage. Almost like you're on kind of hot sand there. So really kind of hot floor. Just very quickly, just start to stamp both feet. So as you kind of stamp both feet, just rotate back for me. Hold the rotation for 2 seconds. And then come back and start again. So really like you're on like really hot, like, do you get many hot beaches in Finland this time of year? We have none in England, I can assure you that. So we don't get many warm beaches in where I'm from at the moment. So like really kind of that hot coal approach. Rotate back. Good. Keep the toes out slightly for me quicker. So rather than, so light and fast. This can make you think, so if you start to get, this can, no one said stop. No one said, you've only got 20 minutes to go, don't worry. Okay, can you do one more? And if you can, just a little bit more rotation in the backswing on this one. That's okay, you're doing brilliant, I can assure you. You're doing very, very, it's hard being watched by a group, especially a group of coaches, so you're doing a great job. And relax. Take your legs out the band for me. Sorry, take both legs out so take it off. And just throw it on the ground, it's fine. So kind of let your heart rate come down. I can challenge you this. Into that little start position again. So point your toes outwards for me, slightly, good. Make a rotation back and be guided by the drill. So whatever the drill guided you to do, be guided by that now. So let the drill guide you into backswing. Good. So just rotate back to top of backswing, better. Different, and again. So as you move through your neck, through your ribs, into your pelvis, into that ankle. Very good. That kind of spiral again through the skull, through the neck, into the kind of here, into the hip, into the ankle. Very good. I mean, even how inactive the foot now is. There was so much adaptation through that foot there that hopefully now is a lot more inactive. Different. I mean, just kind of going back to some of the observation. Well done, by the way. That's brilliant. Well done. These can be a little bit, yeah. It's not the most pleasant one to do, especially when you've got 30 odd people looking at you. So you've done well. But I want to give you one final little kind of add-on. And again, this is where mirrors can be good, and I know there's a few mirrors there, so we'll kind of do our best to use the mirrors, and I thank you, by the way. One of the references I try and give many players who kind of move this way is that around about kind of halfway down, elbow beneath shoulder joint. So if you're my mirror now, so I'm kind of looking at you, is you're my mirror, elbow beneath shoulder. How you currently move. So you can actually use perhaps, I know they're slim mirrors, but it's something, so find a space where you can comfortably see. Good, so just kind of make a backswing again, being very aware of the foot and that left hip. Good. So shoulder guys around about halfway down. Keep coming down for me, so keep rotating, good. Just to about, a little bit, not as far back as that, down as that, sorry. So top of backswing, stop for me. So as you rotate through pelvis and rib cage, you can probably be a little bit more in rotation there, good. More, just kind of live there for a few seconds for me. Look in the mirror. So more elbow beneath shoulder joint. Oops. Different. Again, space where? Good. So how could you find impact from that position? So without moving, show me impact from there. You can then rotate with it as well. So just do that once again. Very good. Most of the pelvis thrust we see connect back to this stuff. It's good. And again, young lady, very good. Good. But I mean, usually be very precise. So use that mirror as a guide. So I know it's slim and it's a bit far away. So just kind of show, good. Again, different. So just play with those. I mean, very different to Marcus before. Marcus clearly very much just the frame he has. I think certainly with this young lady, it's just more probably perception of movement, just some concepts to play with. And I think just some mirrors and some tubing like we did, then I'd be curious to then really see. Just watch that foot. You like to go back into that. Just that little, that's okay. You've done that for some time, so. I'd be curious to then see what you start to observe through impact and then how it connects back to club delivery in particular, once you've had chances to kind of explore and play with this. Very, very well done. Well done. Happy? Know what you need to do? Know what you need to do? Good. Well done. Well done. Happy with that? Good. You can relax. Well done. Well done. You're all disconnected. You can sit down. Yeah, we're done. Right. You did well. Exactly. Yes. Always. Always tell. Yeah, I mean, no, you said it very well. There'd have to be a very clear reason why I'd share this with a player. Um, I'm very lucky, and I know many players that can actually read this themselves. They've got good education around, they've been around the sessions, I thankfully, for some time, but long may it continue. They can now pretty much look at it themselves, and I'm there just to kind of hold their hand, really. More as reinforcement, yeah, not really, yeah, pretty much. So some of the guys that are now, I'm very fortunate to spend time with, can look at it themselves. But that's taken years of good education, but certainly on day one, I mean, all the player wants is to get better at golf. How do I hit it better? That's all they really want. For me, showing them that, I haven't yet made that connection. For me, that showing them plots and going through bits. But what they do enjoy is the visual feedback. I know it's different today in COVID and whatnot. We've got to be a little careful on that stuff. So certainly in kind of pre-COVID times, there was a lot of visual-based feedback they would do with the system with me, like the arrows and some of those things. And that players really respond to that. We'll go into that a lot tomorrow around how you design tasks to improve how they move. But I rarely show players data unless there's a big history, there's a very clear reason why. You might say, look, we know this value is good for you, but by getting that, you've kind of got, I can see that. So they get that connection, that association between, when the foot's good, I rotate better. Okay, I see that, but rarely would I show that. And even then with players, I mean, I had it with a guy I spoke to on the phone last week. We took the approach to, if you have to go and win Augusta this week, do this, but to really evolve through 2021, get good at this stuff. So you even get very divisive with the data. To go and win next week, just put your foot in a nice position. But to really evolve through next year, we really got to explore what the spine is doing and what the hands and arms do. So you can still be very divisive even in sessions with the information. But yeah, I'd rarely show people data unless there's a real reason why.